All right, everyone. So as always, I'm going to all right. As always, I'm going to wait a couple minutes for people to start rolling in. If you are going to follow along, I'll talk about what you might need kind of in a couple minutes here. We are doing some different things with some lights and some sound and all that kind of stuff. So things look a little different. Hopefully they look better. Hopefully we're improving. This is something I kind of thought of pretty last minute. And I'm really slammed. It's not busy here. Actually, a really busy ski season, which is great. But wasn't able to put together everything that I thought I might be able to. Just got really busy. So just now starting to get better sound, better lights. Thanks Charlie, thanks Johnny for the support and helping me out, taking time out of your day to do that. But yeah, we couldn't get our nice camera set up for today, so next week we're hoping we're gonna have a much better resolution, which will also help for when I upload these on YouTube and have all that good stuff. But hopefully you guys can still see me okay. And yeah, we'll wait maybe 2-3 more minutes and then go from there. If you are following along, you can get your set of angles out, your files. Hopefully you have your edge files and or your edge filer. This is a flat edge filer, but if you have your ice edges, get those guys out. Ooh, that's really glary. Hopefully you can see that better through back here. And then your diamond stones. If you've got your set of diamond stones, whether it looks like this or whether it's a mini set like that, get those guys out. And most importantly, all your things to clean your stuff with. So your wire brush, your nylon brush, your wax, or sorry, your steel brush, or this is probably a copper brush, but either way, your towels, your base cleaning fluid if you have some messy bases, that kind of stuff. But yeah, one more minute, we'll wait here, and then we'll start going. This week's gonna be a little bit weird because it's gonna be, hopefully we got this light to help you guys kind of see along the edges of the ski. I'm really, again, gonna try to describe the things that you're looking for here. But we'll go over some things from last week first. So I guess I'll start that now. So hi everybody. If it's your first time tuning in, I'm Ben. I'm the ski tech up here shop manager up here at Eagle Crest up in Juneau, Alaska. Been doing this for a number of years now, and always been interested in ski tuning, been doing it for a lot longer than that. But same disclaimer as always, one, not certified to teach, so you're not going to get any sort of certification after watching this or doing this. I just feel like it's necessary to say that. Don't go into a job interviewing acting like you really know how to tune your skis unless you have done this hundreds of times now for yourself. In which case, if you really do genuinely feel comfortable tuning people's skis and stuff, that is a whole nother thing, and that's awesome. But yeah, not gonna get any sort of certification. Also, there are people out there, and maybe even some of you are watching, who one may have a really different tuning repertoire as me, and may tune very differently than me. And I definitely am not saying any of that kind of stuff is wrong, but I'm showing you guys the best of my knowledge here, and let's get into it. So, a couple things I missed last week. I'd feel bad if I didn't talk about crayon waxing for a second here. So, drip waxing is where you're holding that iron up and you're dripping it on the ski in that kind of pattern and then smoothing it in. Now that works really well, but crayon waxing is something that people really love now, especially since it saves wax. The thing about saving wax isn't just that it's, cost effective. Wax is actually really bad for the environment. So saving wax and limiting the amount that you're using and maximizing the amount that gets absorbed into your ski. Now it's going to come off at some point one way or another, but that's also an environmental thing. So with crayon waxing, you really want to push down pretty hard with your wax bar on the base there. And it doesn't have to be totally filled in. This will actually absorb a lot more wax into the base than you think. Now, I've seen a lot of people where their version of a cram wax, is covering their whole ski in wax and then really not doing much afterwards. That's not a cram wax. You still have to hot wax this in and scrape it. The thing with the cram wax is, one, you barely have to scrape it all, but also you're again able to use a lot less, and you're able to really pinpoint spots and stuff like that pretty well too. Some people like it because getting that really nice color, that dark color into your base that I was talking about last week, is really easy to achieve when you have a cram wax. You just rub it in. Doesn't have to be all over. Can do kind of still that crisscrossing pattern and stuff like that. But then you're still going to go off and hot wax it afterwards and then scrape it after that. So that's the only difference between a cram wax, or I don't know what else to call it. But that's that. And people really like it. You can try that out for sure. Just make sure maybe the first time your temperature is a little bit lower, so you're less likely to burn those edges. Kind of on the contrary, a little bit higher will let you get off the ski a little bit quicker. So if that works for you, where you can get a little bit of a higher temp and then kind of really quickly go over it and get that wax in and absorbed, if that works for you too, go for it. But try both of them out. And then I didn't even really talk about last week, but cleaning the sidewalls of your ski is really important. So big chunks and like clumps that come onto the sidewalls when you're dripping are really not that big of a deal because they'll pop right off. But what happens is, as you scrape and kind of as you massage it in there, little parts will just drip onto the sidewalls of this edge here. And those little tiny ones are a lot harder to get off in terms of when they hit the snow, they're not just going to pop off automatically. And so getting those off and running that scraper, metal or whatever you need, or just a normal scraper along that edge and getting those off, really easy. Honestly, probably wouldn't use a metal edge unless you're doing something with the edge afterwards, because it's going to damage it just a little bit. But yeah, just use that scraper, get off that sidewall. And that's kind of a perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about this week, which is edging. Now, the unfortunate thing about ski tuning is that in order of what you need to know is actually the reverse order of what you're doing when you fully tune a ski or a snowboard. So by fully tuning, I mean grinding the base, resetting the stone pattern, edging it, waxing it, making sure everything is kosher, and sending it out the door. Now, full tune, again, is something that term gets thrown around. It really means a lot of things for a lot of different people. And filling core shots and doing top sheet work and stuff like that, if there's damage on the fiberglass sheet. Now, this ski I'm going to be using today has about 10,000 holes in it. It is just kind of a ski that I use to practice or to demonstrate things or to let my staff practice on if they want to try new things out. But normal ski, obviously, you're going to want to be more careful with. But I'm pretty much done with this ski what I would do in what's called a full tune. So the first part of a full tune is making sure that your core shots are filled, your base is looking good. Then you grind your base down, you set your stone pattern, then you edge, which is what we're going to do today. And then you wax, and then, well, actually with the bindings, you would have done any adjustments with the bindings first. The only reason for that being when you put it into a vise and you start yanking on the bindings and start doing different things with test and adjust and stuff like that, you're going to end up scuffing up the bottom. And that last part of that waxing is that nice fine polish. And it's the same with the edges. That nice fine polish makes it look really good when it comes up, or goes out the door, or if it's just your own equipment, makes it look really good when you start taking out the ski. So you want to do the binding stuff first, but that's just a shop thing. That has nothing to do with, if you're working at home, no big deal. But this edge is going to be the last thing you're going to do after you do all of that. So unfortunately, we haven't really talked about some of that stuff, but let's go over what would happen with the edges before this just slightly, so you know the state that your ski is in. So the first thing that you would do before you edge your ski is you would be base grinding it. Now the reason why that's important, not that you have to base grind it every time you edge, but if you're talking about being completely thorough with the ski. The reason why that's important is because it assures that you're not edge high or base high. When you're skiing, you're putting a lot more pressure on the outsides of your skis than you are the insides of your skis. So you get a natural warping, and while it can be really, really small, it's definitely, you can start to feel it over time. Now, that being said, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today, I'll say, oh, you can really feel this, or this is really obvious, or you can change this, this, and this, depending on how you're skiing. If you are not super duper attuned to your skiing yet, don't worry if you can't feel these things. You can generally tune your equipment without knowing the very nitty gritty of what you need to be tuning for. You can give yourself a general tune and still be just fine. But you want to make sure when you're hand edging skis that your base is flat for one main reason. If you try to set something at a certain angle, just this for example, over an edge, and your ski is pushing up on it because your base is higher. Now I'm exaggerating that right now, obviously. But even if it's a little bit higher, it's not going to give you that exact edge angle that this is forcing into the ski. And so you just use a true bar. If you don't know how to use a true bar, you put it along your ski, make sure the same amount of light is coming out from both sides. You could also just kind of see in general if one side is going to be heavier than the other. And so like right here, there actually is a little spot where I am a tiny bit base high, but nothing true dramatic. And as we go along the ski, we're looking pretty good. We can see the same amount of light along this true bar the whole time, and we're looking pretty good. Now, let's talk about base bevel for a little bit, because that's really important, that it's something that most people don't even think about. Now, the people who are tuning in right now or watching this are probably people who have heard that term before. You're probably more educated than honestly the average skier is. But hopefully this will give you a better understanding of what that means. So I'm going to use the vertical grip a lot today because that should hold the ski relatively vertically. Now, you've got other types of grips as well and vices, and everybody has a different type of vice they like. I actually don't love this one. I've got one I might move to on the other side of the room as we go through this exercise. But I'm going to be using this vertical grip a lot today. And as you look on this, what you would assume is happening with your edge is that you have an outer edge at a straight line, and you have an inner edge at a straight line. And that's making a 90-degree edge right here. And when you hit that edge, you're going to start turning, and that's what the radius of your ski is. Actually, it's not quite that simple. Now, there's a lot of different ways to think about this, but the most simple way to think about it is just the fact that you can sharpen that edge to 90 degrees, which is what we're going to call edge 0. So a 90-degree edge has no edge change in it, so its edge angle is 0. And you can adjust that by adjusting the base edge and by adjusting the side edge. And you can adjust those anywhere from reasonably like 1 to 3 or a half to 3 degrees on each side. So if you have a 1 degree adjustment and a 1 degree adjustment, you're at 91 degrees and 91 degrees, or actually the way we call it is 89 degrees and 91 degrees. Subtract those two numbers and you have a 2 degree edge angle. So knowing your edge angle in terms of degree is nice to think about, but it's not really that useful. Knowing that 1 and 1 is much more useful. Because if you say you have a 2 degree edge, then you could be 1.5 and 0.5, you could be 0.5 and 1.5, you could be 1 and 1, you could be 0. I mean, you really wouldn't be 0 and 2, but it could happen. So knowing your bevel is really, really, really nice. Now I'm going to take the computer and hopefully not break it by extending all these cords. Now this is a shop edger, and it's giving you a really nice illustration of base bevel and edge bevel. So this right here is adjusting your edge bevel, and this one right here is adjusting your base bevel. And you can kind of see that in this one is adjusting this angle, and this one is adjusting this angle. Now, the reason why I like this is because it's very easy to show you as I change those dials how the machine changes to make that happen. Now I'm going to show you how this machine works just very briefly, because I think this is a very good exercise even though you won't have this at home. Now this machine is something that we use in the shop, and I think a lot of this exercise has been to show you guys when you bring a ski to a shop what they're doing. And this is most of the time what they're going to use for your edges. It's extremely quick and extremely fine and gives you a very, very good finish without having to actually finish your edge further and do any other processes except detuning, which is super duper awesome. So let's see. Now, once I start turning this thing on, it is going to be so loud where you're not going to hear me anymore. It's not extremely loud, but you definitely won't be able to hear me. The way this works, you basically got a sanding belt. This moves, and you run your ski over it, and it sands down the edge. Now, when that happens, this is right now set at a 1 degree angle, and you want to keep it flat to this the whole time you're edging that through. And I'll show you what that looks like. So this is a 1 degree base bevel angle on the side edge that I'm going to show you right now. And you can see how good, well, hopefully you can see how fine that edge is. Now, that took 2 seconds, and that was something that would take a lot longer if you were hand edging. You do the same thing with the side edge. You bring this up, and now this is your guiding, and now this is set at a 1 degree. So as I guide my ski over it now this way, it's now going to be hitting this bottom edge and putting it at 1 degree. So I'll show you what that looks like. And just like when you're hand edging, you try to get nice, even, smooth strokes. Now, I probably would have finished this edge a little bit more because there's some nicks, because this is a test ski essentially. But now you've got a 1 degree and a 1 degree edge, and it's extremely polished and fine. Again, I don't really know if this backlight is helping or hindering, but hopefully you can see, yeah, you can see that now. Really good, fine 1 degree edge. Now, watch what happens, and I'll bring the computer back over. Watch what happens to this as I change the edge bevel angles. So I'm going to put it back on the side, because you're almost never changing your base bevel angle. It's almost always 1 degree or a ½ degree on your base bevel. But see if you can see this. As I change this, which is your side bevel angle, get you behind here, it changes the angle that that arm is at. Now that's really exaggerating, but that's 4 degrees right there, which is the most you would ever do, and really honestly you would pretty much never do it. And then here's a common setting, which is 1 degree. Now I probably messed up the camera a lot there, but you can see that if you were to change the angle there, change the way that arm is sitting from this angle to this angle, that changes it from 1 degree to 2 degrees, and if you're sitting flat on that, as you run it through the edger, you're changing your angle. So, pretty simple on a machine edger. And that's why we really like to use it here in shops, because it's very quick, it's safe, and it's consistent. I can get a really nice edge from this really, really easily using that. The thing that it's not is it's not, how should I say, customizable, or it's not that it's not versatile. It's very versatile. It can give you almost any edge angle, but it doesn't allow for further customization. What it's really nice for is getting that set. So if you understand edge bevel, the first thing you would end up doing is, and I'll show you this, is grinding down that edge so it is relatively flat. And then you go about polishing it and making it better and cleaner. That's really good if you have like a disgusting edge. If there's too much rust on your edge for you to even see your edge, you need to come bring it to a shop and they'll take care of that first step. And honestly, if you've treated a ski like that, it's probably not a ski that's going to be great for hand tuning anyways, because hand tuning is a little bit more sensitive. But then you could go about hand tuning and hand edging your skis and have kind of a better experience doing that. So what hand edging allows you to do is make minute changes to, well, in reality, it allows you to do anything. But in practice, what it more so allows you to do is make minute changes to your ski to either adapt to the conditions you're skiing in or adapt your own skiing style and customize your ski to fit you how you like to ski more. So how does your edge and base bevel influence your skiing? And that is something that instructors now are taught, and well, they always have been, and it's really, really, really important in terms of becoming a better skier. I think a big part of why I wanted to do this was to make people better skiers, because learning about this equipment, even if you don't take anything away from this in terms of how you actually can maintain your own equipment, and you just bring it to a shop and have them do it, that is perfectly fine. Just knowing the things that you guys are learning now is extremely useful for just learning how to be a better skier. So how does your edge angle affect your skiing? Well, your base bevel is almost always going to stay at about 1 degree. Sometimes it's 0.5 degrees. The reason for that is you want a little bit of slip. You can imagine a 90-degree angle or a base bevel angle of 0 means that the second that you turn onto that side edge or start to move your weight onto your outside edge, you're catching, and you're going to start turning along that edge. Now, for a really intense racer or somebody that's using a slipped track, that might be really, really useful and might be what you want, or if it's super icy. But for the most part, you actually want to be able to slip into your turn just a little bit. And so when you have a base bevel angle of 1, you're allowing yourself to shift a little bit of your weight to your outside edge and engage your turn a little bit before your ski actually starts to catch and bring you into that turn. Now, detuning is also something that is extremely useful in terms of adjusting your skis for the conditions and how you ski and for the shape of your ski itself. But for the most part, your bevel angle is going to be responsible for that. So that's keeping your base bevel angle. Now, why would you want to change your side bevel angle? Well, the side bevel angle is going to change how deep you can get into that turn. So a 1 degree side bevel is going to be almost a 90-degree angle. It's going to be 90 or 89 and essentially 89 or 91. And that's going to make it so that when you turn onto that outside edge, you immediately are getting to your edge, but you've basically hit the limit of how hard your edge can turn. Now adjusting that to 2 and 3 degrees as we get steeper and steeper, and obviously this is I'm using my hand as a massive exaggeration to this, but adjusting that to 2 and 3 degrees is going to make it so that I can get harder into that side edge, cut down your radius, make your turning a little bit sharper and a little bit more true. But it's also going to make it so that when you turn, you're going to turn hard no matter what. Now, that's not to say that skis with a higher side angle can't be slippy. They still can float on snow and still can be really slippy. But a lot of times the skis that you'll see with those higher edge angles are flatter skis that are made kind of for groomer speed and for making really nice hard turns on groomers. Because that's going to allow you to cut into that turn to make that really nice smooth S turn. Versus something that's more versatile for the entire mountain might have a lower angle at 2 or 1 because it's allowing you to still get into your turns, but it's allowing you also to slip a little in the powder or the crust or something that you might come across while you're skiing. So that's your angle, and that's a super massive simplification of it. But if you don't know what your base bevel angle is, or you don't know what your angles are at all, you can still use this true bar, and you can actually see your edge angles with a true bar. So instead of focusing now on the center of the ski, if you hold your true bar and essentially sandwich it between your edge, you'll see it start to come up, and you'll see it hit that 1 degree base angle. And that's what that is right there. And you can check your ski to see that it's consistent down the ski by holding it against that edge and making sure that that bevel angle is consistent. And I can see that if I keep this flat against the edge, this stays in the same spot. And I know that because I just edged it. And even if there were imperfections, it would still, for the most part, hold that edge angle. So that's how to use that to just check your edges. If you see a really dramatic gap in that, it's a good indication that you have skis that's factory tuned at a higher base bevel edge, or you tuned yours at a higher base bevel edge. If you're looking to do this afterwards to double check yourself, there you go. You can just use this and kind of note what angle or how much separation you have on that. Now, 1 second here. I should have gotten this before, but this is actually a standard chart, and it's from the Pisty office, but it's the ski manufacturer's recommended bevel angle, and that we assume that that as a shop is what they're tuning it out of the factory at. And so when we get a pair of skis in, if it's a Vocal, I'll go to Vocal, which annoyingly is obviously the last page because it's alphabetical. I should have picked a better example. But Vocal is an angle of 1 and 2, so 1 on the base edge and 2 on the side edge. I'm going to set your ski up at that just to start because that's what they factory recommend for it. So another reason why a shop is really good, they have resources like that to just tell you. Now you could go in and ask a shop what the recommended base bevel is for your ski, but if you're hand tuning, you're probably not going off the recommendation. You're doing it because you want an exact feel out of your ski, so you should just go at what your own is. Now, the really nice thing about hand tuning, again, is that you can start at one angle and then change it to another angle and then change it to another angle, and it's not that huge of a deal. So that's super awesome. But I've been talking a whole lot, so let's just get into a little bit of hand edging here. So, as with everything in the shop, cleanliness is godliness, and godliness is loneliness. But you're going to want to really make sure that your edges and your bases are clean before you start tuning. The reason for that being, you're using really, really fine metal files at this point. And so when you do that, you have the chance to grind things into your base and grind things into your edges. Now, actually, we'll talk about hardening in a little bit, but the only other preparation that you need, so actually I'll show you what that looks like. So what you're going to want to do is take your copper brush, get it down the sides. Now, if you hold this just over like the little parts over exposing the edge, you're going to be waxing after this. What you don't want to do is take off too much of that pattern in there, that texture. You don't want to be fracturing that, but you want to get everything away from the edge. And then at that point, you can take your nylon brush and get all that out of there. And then honestly, as a finish, I really like to use oil absorption brushes. Do that. Now I already cleaned the rest of the ski. That was just an example for you guys. So my whole ski is clean right now. But if you are following along, take a pause. Do that upon all 4 edges of your 2 skis. Because it's really nice to stay at one step, go through your side edge, and go through your base edge, all that stuff. Now, I said side edge, then base edge. Not all people swear by that. Some people think it doesn't matter. I really like it. So, big part of tuning, especially with machines like this one, and especially a machine like that one, is it's so effective at what it does, it actually kicks up material quite a bit. And if you're using your side edge first, you're grinding down this side edge and you're kicking material onto that base edge. Then when you grind on your base edge, you're kicking off that material, you're shaving off that material as you do your finish on your base edge. Now you're probably thinking, well, wouldn't that just kick material back onto your side edge? It does maybe a little bit, but you can take that out with your deburring stones and things like that, and it's not as big of a deal. What I don't like is kicking things up onto the side edge and then potentially bring things back down onto the base edge. I would rather have it be up on the side edge potentially, even though in a perfect scenario you'd be cleaning off completely, so there's no what I call a lip. Not sure actually what it's called, but it's just an overhanging piece of metal that's still attached that can become grabby. And most of the time when people come in complaining about grabbiness, it's because they have a massive lip on their ski. And you can feel it. Now, to adjust what I just did, these, or any glove, gardening glove, whatever it may be, pretty important for edging skis. For waxing, stuff like that, not a huge deal. For edging skis, one, you're gonna get this thing to a really perfect, nice edge. Now, I've already got this edged, and it'll cut the backside of my finger. It'll take, I don't have any dead skin because I work on edges all day, but it'll take the dead skin off the front of your fingers if it's done right. So using edge gloves is really nice. That being said, sometimes to finish things, and once you're sure there's no burrs on these edges, you want to be able to feel that, so you can feel how sharp you're making things and kind of remember it and recreate it in the future, or change it in the future. If you don't really remember how sharp you made it, or you don't have a good idea of how sharp it was when you went to go ski on it and something's wrong, well, you don't know how to reset it either. So that's that. So again, side edges, and then we're going to start doing the base edges. But before you do your side edges, there's something really important. Now this one's been grinded down, and the nice thing about this machine is it's powerful enough where it'll basically grind off your sidewall. Now that sounds terrible, but you have to grind off that sidewall to get your first edge. If you have a brand new ski, a lot of times this sidewall is overhanging over the side of your ski, and if you're taking a hand edge to it where you're supposed to be at a certain degree, and you've got material pushing up right here, well then that's not going to work out very well, because it's going to be pushing you back into that different angle, and it's not going to work. So it's the only time you would use a coarse file like this. Really nice thing. Now I'll introduce you to probably what I consider the best piece of equipment for this. Where is this? And this is an adjustable edge angler or beveler. I get all of my tools again from SVST. They don't sponsor this or anything like that, but they're really good. Really small company out of Sun Valley, Idaho. Good people, have really good resources and stuff like that. But what this does is, and I'm going to unscrew it real quick, and you actually are supposed to use a coin, so that's not just janky. But you've got your file in here, and this is an ice cut file. This is the exact same thing as, let me get a not crummy looking one. This, which is just a longer ice cut file that we're going to be using on the base edge. So this is the exact same thing, but this allows you basically to put it into here, and then by adjusting that, you can adjust every angle that you could possibly want your stuff at. Now you would never ever want a 5-degree angle, which is what that is. Now why would they even put that there? Well, it's for this exact reason. It's to shave off material from your sidewall. So you could put your fatter file in there, and remember these are one way. So when you put it in, you're gonna have to remember which way the teeth are going. Put it in. Hard to do with gloves. Now, the danger of not wearing gloves here is getting metal burrs in your hands. And it really stinks. It's not as much of a danger with hand tuning and a lot more with machine tuning. But just be aware, if you're not using gloves, be very careful of touching these edges after you've done any sort of filing along them, because that's where you get really nasty burrs in your hands. But you can just use this and crank that angle up. Jeez, it's hard to pick things up, but crank that angle up to, I'm going all the way down to, oh, whoops. Let's Go all the way to 85 degrees there. Sorry, that took way longer than it needed to. And this is when you're going to want to just grind along there and just take off any of that edge material or that sidewall material. You can see I've still got a little bit in there, so there is still a little bit of sidewall. And you shouldn't need to use very much pressure on this at all. You're just trying to take away anything that might interfere with it. And if it's not interfering with it when you're doing this process at a 5-degree angle, it's not going to interfere with it at a 2 or 3 degree angle or a 1 degree angle. What you really want to make sure of after every step here, and I'm going to take my gloves off at this point, after every step and every file you're using, make sure you're using your copper brush and cleaning out the teeth of these things. Now, I'm using a bunch of really, really old and used materials today for this lesson. So this is a little bit of an instance of do as I say and not as I do, as well as me touching this angle because I know it's deburred and stuff like that. But really, you want to keep these things clean because anything that gets into these tools, again, is going to either interfere with the preciseness of your tuning, or it's going to make it so that that is actually going to get into your tuning, which is even worse when you start thinking about grinding metal parts into your tuning and stuff like that. So just because it's good practice, I'll also reset this. Reset this to 0 degrees, and not 1 degree, which is what you're going to do it at, 0 degrees. The reason why you're setting everything to 0 degrees is because it makes you think about that next step. If you're setting it at 0 degrees and you start edging and nothing's happening, well, it's because it's at 0 degrees. It makes you think you did something wrong. Also, it makes you think, oh, I'm not at 0, or I'm not at my base bevel angle that I need to be. Let me fix that. So that's why I always reset everything. It's why I take belts off the belt, because I need to think about which belt I'm going to use for that next tune, things like that. So reset yourself. Now, so going to get your edge angler. These files are one directional. See, it says the direction it is right there, and it says ice cut. Again, I'm not sponsoring this video or anything, but Ice Cut's a really nice brand for this kind of thing. Now, the only thing when you're putting this in your edger is you can think about, you can put it all the way in like that or a little bit out and keep running it out. Now, you want to keep it flat along that. It was really hard to do upside down so you guys could see. But when you bring it out, that's going to wear it in a different way. And you want even wear throughout this file so that you kind of know how precise you're going to be. So when you move on to a different part of the file, you're not becoming more or less kind of sharp along that edge, and you can use the same number of strokes. So I haven't used this edger very much at all. So I'm just going to kind of keep it in the middle and tighten this down. Now you want to change your bevel angle, and I'm changing it to 1, so 89, before you totally tighten it down so it doesn't either hurt the plastic in there or hurt the file. Tighten that thing down really good now. Doesn't have to be too excessive. Tighten it down real good. You're good to go. Now, this tool, again, is directional, and you want to be doing it on your side edge. There's multiple different tools you can use on your base edge and on your side edge, but this is the one I really prefer on a side edge for sure. Now, I'm going to move to an edge that is not perfectly filed. So this one's a little bit better because it's not perfect yet. The edge that I was using on that machine, which is that other edge, is perfect, and I want you guys to be able to see these changes. So, put your edger on, hold it tight to the ski, and you're going to be wanting to use about 8 to 12 inch, or let's say 6 to 9 inch strokes here. And the reason for that is because as you move along the ski, you're going to be moving down about 1 inch every time. Or if you hit some really hard spot, you can keep on that spot. But once you start feeling even pressure throughout the ski, you're going to want to move on. If you have really long strokes, as you go along your stroke, you have less pressure here from your body than you did back here. So you want to kind of keep your body over your edger and have short strokes under your body, so you're making sure that pressure is constant. Now, it's not the end of the world if the pressure is not constant, but what you want to achieve is that perfectly uniform edge. So that pressure wants to be as constant as possible. Now, every couple of strokes with this thing, clean it out, or maybe every half ski with these guys, or bring it out a little bit so you're touching a little part of it differently, or do both. Clean it out really nice, get all the stuff out of those cuts, or you can flip it over. Flip it over and use it the other way. So that's what I'm going to do. Flipped it over. And keep working on that edge. Now, as you keep working on that edge, you might need to move yourself in your vise. But again, doesn't matter where the ski you are, take short strokes. Now you can see through my movements that I'm catching at certain spots. Those catch spots are hardened steel, and they're what you're trying to get rid of. So hardened steel is superheated steel. That happens when you hit something really hard, or you scrape it, or you burn your edge, or anything like that happens. You're creating hardened steel, and these are really good at getting out hardened steel, but they will catch extensively. So when you're at that spot, just work it. Just really short until finally you get through that spot without any more resistance, and you can keep going on to the next spot. So again, I don't have too much imperfection here. That was really stupid what I just did to run my finger along the edge there. Probably don't want to do that. But if there was a spot right here, let's say, that was imperfect, edge it until it's smooth, and then you just go no resistance to the next spot. And I'm going to get this next spot good, and then we're going to change our file. We're going to clean it, and we're going to change it. And this is the reason why you can't find that many videos of people fully doing their edges on YouTube and stuff like that. Because if you're fully doing it, either you have to be a shop that has about 10 of these, and you can go about it by using a different one and then changing them all at the end. And that's really, really, really nice. And that's how like race tuning, not bunks, but like houses are and stuff like that. They'll just have a bunch of waxers, a bunch of edgers, a bunch of hand tuners, a bunch of files, stuff like that. But if you can't do that, it takes an ungodly amount of time if you're doing it correctly. And people don't want to do it incorrectly and show it incorrectly. So again, I'll just show one more time. Get along that side, and you can see how much it's cutting off. A little spot up here. And let's see if there's a little, looks pretty perfect. So I'm going to check my edge. I'm going to go all the way along my ski, making sure that with very little pressure, I have almost no catching along my edge. Still short strokes. And it feels good. There's no catching anywhere along this edge. The edge looks consistent as you go along it. It looks consistent. No excessive nicks or anything like that. And now you can move on to your base edge. Again, before you undo your base edge, you want to do that clean. Wipe it out, wipe your base out so you're not hurting anything. Now your base edge is a little bit more, not complicated, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. So a lot of people like to use an edger like this. Now this boy says 92 degrees on it. I mean, this has a 2-degree base edge on it. So all you would need to do is, I actually don't have a short file. so I'm going to use a diamond stone, and I will explain what that is in a little bit. But you would just use your stone, get it on here. Whoops, did this backwards. In a way where it can interact with the edge, but also not be in the way. And it's kind of annoying, and that's why I don't love these things. I get pretty frustrated with trying to get them situated correctly. But once you do, you're able to, with your stone here or your file, essentially do the exact same thing where you're edging along it. Well, actually, I apologize. This is mostly used for side edges too, but you can potentially use it for base edges in the same way. What most people use for the base edge is something like this, or just the same thing that I was showing you last time with the adjustable. This will work on your base edge as well. So it's really nice. It fits right there. Not as well, but you can still get a flat angle on it. But if you want to be more precise, something like this is simple. Now, this is not a really good one. This is a really, really, really bad one. But what you want to do with it is you want to line it up so that that pocket is in your edge like that. So now you can see it slides forwards and back. Get an edge-only file. Now, I didn't talk much about files here, but these files are what's called an ice cut file. Oop, there we go. And these are pretty specific for ski tuning. It's made in Switzerland, which is where like all ski tuning equipment is made. And it's made to be really fine and really perfect, and to be kind of the correct hardness for ski edges. That's the biggest advantage of it is it's correct hardness, so it cuts really well. But the way, or you can get files at the hardware store that will do the same thing, but they're going to edge maybe once or twice and be kind of ruined. As opposed to something like this, you can get probably 20 to 30 really good full edges out of it, and they're not really all that much more expensive. So I definitely go with one of these guys. These ice cut ones work really well. And the way you want to work this, most of them have a handle right here, so you can press down, but you want to keep that within your edge, kind of wedged up against that, and the same thing. Now, these are made to work only in one direction, so you need to keep in mind that as you run this through, you need to be running it through in the right direction. And the best way to assure that is you line it up and you do this edge that's away from you, not the edge that's towards you. So the edge across the ski is a lot easier to get constant pressure on as you put pressure on this edger. And the place that you're going to want to put pressure on is kind of weird. So you're kind of putting pressure over here and pushing this at that angle, that 1 degree angle against the edge. You can see there's a bit of an angle there, a bit of play. And you can see this edge get much finer, and there's actually a little imperfection here that I can take out. So you can see me take out this imperfection along this edge. Now, this is one of the reasons why some people like other vices that have a vertical clamp. This ski is moving quite a bit on me. And these vices that I have, because 99% of what I do is not hand tuning, are really not made for that kind of thing. I have other vices, but getting yourself a nice pair of vices that allows you to be comfortable is going to be really beneficial if you're going to be hand tuning quite a bit. So that was just a little bit of a side. Let's take out this little spot here. Oop. You want to make sure you're just applying pressure, oops, over that edge as to not damage the ski at all. I'm really struggling for whatever reason here. And now you can see this nick, even just with a couple of strokes here, is almost out. So I'm going to go one more time. over this one spot. And it only works in that one direction. Now, if you're applying pressure on the inside of the ski, like I did a little bit, you can see a little bit of scraping. Now, that scraping's not going to hurt your ski, but what it does, it takes out that texture. And that texture is one of the really nice, cool things that you just did to fully tune your ski. So you obviously want to minimize that as much as possible. Now, keep your pressure on that outside of that edge. Run it along. Try to get those nicks out. And as you're using a tool like this with an edger like this, every couple of strokes, you want to be changing the part of the edger that you're using. So that's going to assure that you're getting consistent wear along your file. Sorry, change the part of the file, not the edger. It's going to assure that you're getting consistent wear with the file as you do it, which is, again, going to assure the quality of your next tune as you go on. So again, because this takes so long, I'm not going to tune both edges. I'm not going to tune the whole thing even. I took out this spot. You can see it's a lot better. There's still a little bit of hardened steel in there right there, but really not much. Took out that spot pretty good. So you got your base edge, you got your side edge now. If you have the luxury of it, this is an ultra soft gummy stone. This is going to take off the burrs from your edge, but not do any detuning. A harder gummy stone, which a lot of people have that looks like this, is going to start the detuning process. Now you've got your angle at 1 and 1, and you want to do your detuning separately. This is a really sharp angle. You want to keep it sharp, you use one of these guys. And all you got to do is just go along your ski really lightly with this guy, because you don't want to be detuning and you don't want to damage this product either. Go along both sides and just take all those metal burrs off the ski. No more metal burrs on the ski. And now, besides the sharpness of the ski, your hands are kind of safe to move about it, which is really nice. You know, as I've said before, my hands get really wrecked. If you do a lot of tuning, your hands get really wrecked, so I'm kind of used to it. But if you're not, a metal burr in your hand is the last thing you want right now. So, yeah. So, now you go about your polishing process. And what you need for this is your set of diamond stones. So just like your files, your diamond stones come in two different types. You've got files that are like this one and files that are like this one. Same thing, you've got diamond stones that are like this one and diamond stones that are like this one. Now, I don't know where my blue is. There's my blue. So those are the same stone. They're the same grit, which in this instance is 600 times. And the really nice thing about diamond stones is that they are not one directional like files are, and they're really, really versatile. Diamond stones are amazing. Now, you might say, all right, well, I just edged my ski. It looks pretty good. Well, aren't I done? You can be. You definitely can be, and you could skip this part and go to your tuning process. The really nice thing about using diamond stones and using polishing products is it'll actually conserve your edge quite a bit, which I should have talked about in the first place, but I'll talk about it a little bit now. When should you get these edges done? Now, a hardcore ski enthusiast will probably tell you once a year, and then just keep perfecting them after that. Keep polishing them. But in reality, especially like people watching in Southeast Alaska, those people are probably ski professionals that travel around going to places where there's a lot of snow all the time. And Juneau, not so much. And so they're maybe hitting 1 or 2 small rocks a year, and we're maybe hitting a dozen. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Your skis aren't ruined if you hit a rock or you mess up your edge or anything like that. This is why we're going through this whole process. But in reality, you might need to fully tune your edges twice a year, sometimes, if you live in a place that's a little bit less consistent. So, not that anywhere is really consistent at this point in time, but anyways. So it's really when you're noticing there's a lot of hardened steel, there's a lot of nicks upon your edge, or you're feeling your responsiveness try to cut out. If you ski 80 times in a year and you're skiing mostly on groomers and hard pack and ice, you probably want your edges resharpened at some point because they're going to be perfectly fine in terms of the health of the edge, but not necessarily perfectly fine in terms of the edge angle or the edge sharpness. In reality, a lot of times it's the other way around, where the edge is perfectly fine in terms of its angle, but it's rusty or beat to crap or whatever it may be, and you should get it sharpened there too. And again, I would bring it to a shop so that at that point you can get it totally reset, and you can make sure that that angle is completely consistent, and they can do it very quickly and pretty inexpensively. Just doing your edges at most shops is going to be between $15 and $20, and it's going to save you a lot of hassle. All the equipment that I'm showing you guys today, probably a couple $100 of equipment, not a whole ton, like maybe cost you like $150 to get all this stuff. You could do this whole process on about $50, $60 though. So don't let that intimidate you in terms of getting into it and starting to do your own stuff. Definitely get a set of cheap diamonds, or they're all the same company. So diamond stones, wherever you can find them cheap, and a file and an adjustable grip, and you'll be well on your way to being able to do this kind of stuff yourself. Definitely encourage people to keep it. So, but when you notice that maybe you've been skiing once or twice or 3 times, and your edges are no longer have that really nice little polish that they had when they came out of the shop, that's when you can repolish your edge, and that's actually going to make it more consistent. It's going to make it a little bit harder and cleaner, as well as just doing the fine polishing process. But that is going to preserve your edge. I tell people all the time, edging your ski is not about the sharpness as much as it's about preserving your edge, making it work time and time again, consistently, how you want it to work. So, you can use something like this again, or you can use something like this again. You're doing the same way with these diamond stones. You're going to be putting this up against your edge angle again, sliding your diamond stone in, and applying that pressure off the outside of the stone. Or if you prefer to do it, if you have the smaller diamond stones, this way is actually probably a little bit more proper. You can apply pressure directly over the edge a little bit better that way. And with these ones, again, they're 2-directional. So it's just like polishing a rock or anything else, a piece of wood. You start with your your coarsest grit. So for my diamond stones I have here, that's going to be, I got 220. What is this? Where's the blue? The blue is 600, and I got 120. So I got 120, 220, 400, 600. 600, even this 400, it feels like silk. You're talking about a really polished edge. You're talking about something that's race quality, ready to go, and is going to be extremely consistent throughout. The only way to get that, though, is to go through all the process of doing the 120 with that same thing. Doing the 120, then the 220, then the 400, then the 600. So this is your 120, but this is on the short stone. And I'll just show you real quickly. I actually even have a coarser diamond stone for this, but that's okay. I'll just show you using this one real quick here. Again, same edge angle, make sure all that is fine. I'm going to go side edge here. And these are 2-directional. So this one, cool. Let's actually get this thing setted in here. Edit that one out for the YouTube. All right, get this settled in here. And now, and man, does that look good. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of polishing. It makes these things look amazing. And you're not going to see really well unless you look at it in person. But these edges are just perfectly polished and looking really nice. And they're going to be long-lasting and versatile and get you going where you need to go. But you're not done yet, because you're never done because I always got something to say. But you need to detune your skis. Now, detuning is definitely going to be the most controversial part of this video. And I'll say what, I'll kind of copy a line that I've seen multiple times in multiple other videos. Detune yourself and start with nothing and go to a lot. So the way that it used to be is with a long straight ski, you want your front of your ski to slip a little bit more than the underfoot of your ski. And you can imagine with the super duper long ski, if I'm skiing along and the front of my ski is catching an edge angle and it's 190 centimeter ski, which is kind of normal for those old style skis, then immediately when your tip catches, you're going to start going that way. And that is super dangerous. It's actually the biggest MCL, ACL injury inducer, is from not detuning, and it's because that front of your ski is essentially carrying your knee through that turn, and your knee wants to go that way, and it's going that way. And that is just, I make my shop techs watch a video of somebody getting open ACL, MCL surgery, because that's how much I think about detuning in terms of it's better safe than sorry. You would rather do all this work and you can redo all the work you just did. I would rather dull out too much and have to redo it than not dull out enough and get an injury. And that is really what I talk about in terms of shop tuning. Now, for you tuning your own skis, that's a little bit different because you might know a little bit better what you're getting into and how things feel. But the thought is nowadays, your skis aren't flat like that. When you ski your skis, the front and the tip of your ski oftentimes is rockered up. And so it's lifted off the snow and it's not catching in the start. And so you don't need to detune that part of the ski because that part of the ski is only going to be catching into the snow once you get into an area where it needs to catch into the snow, and it's going to help you go through your turn. So you don't detune it because your ski is essentially compensating for your edge grab up front, and the same thing in the back with that tail rocker. Now, as I said before, some skis don't even have an edge up there. I'll actually bring out a pair of skis. So, these are my Salomon 2s, or my Salomon Rocker 2s, and these skis don't even have an edge up there. I'll show you better here, but you can kind of see, so it's got a tip protecting edge right there, but there's no edge until you get right there. And that's because that part of your ski is not helping you through your turn regardless, or it shouldn't be. All it should be doing is contributing to the floatiness of the ski. Now this ski is called the Rocker 2, and I promise you right now I'm holding this up straight, not at an angle, and it flares out hugely. So my rocker point on this ski is actually right about here. And that's why this ski is taller than me, but really you're not using most of this part of the ski. So I can ski the ski just fine because my contact points are really like right here, which is below my chin, and that's below where you would normally size somebody for a ski. So this whole point is essentially the point where you would be detuning, but you don't need to anymore because it's rockered out like that. Same thing with the tail. You got a little bit of tail rocker coming up here. And again, I don't have an edge at all past this point. There's no edge on this back until you get the tail protecting edge, but this is not edged at all. And that's because you're not using that back edge of the ski at all because it's rockered out. And so what people now, a lot of people think is you don't need to really detune because those things are tracking anyways. My argument is kind of the opposite. So I think that you should detune the tips and the tails on rockered out skis, not necessarily more, but easily just as much as any other skis. And this is my reasoning for it. If they're going to go as far as not even putting an edge on that ski, then it should be a shape where you are almost never interacting with that part of the ski. And so even if they do put an edge on that, you almost never should be interacting with it. And so if you're never supposed to be interacting with it because it's super rockered out, then why not detune it? why not make it dull? And I'll show you real quick what I mean by detuning before I go too much further. So this is a hard stone. It's a gummy stone. And this is a specific detuning stone. This is quite a bit harder. This is a little bit softer, but still really, really hard. This is basically like a rock. And after you've edged your skis, you can go along your ski. I'm not going to do this because these are my skis. I don't actually want to detune them right now. But I'll get the sample skis in here. And you can go along that spot that's really sharp. And you always want to go tip to tail. Always tip to tail. But you just pass it along that. At a 45-degree angle. As close as you can get to a 45-degree angle to this. If you get too far down, again, it'll push that edge up. All you got to do, though, here is push that edge back down. So you detune these, and it'll just soften out that edge. Now, it'll still make the edge crisp. The edge will still be responsive unless you really, really overtune. And it'll be healthy and polished. That's the biggest thing, is that it's healthy and polished. Now, I said this in the last video because we're moving backwards. But if you end up using a stone like this, when you do your wax afterwards, make sure that this is clear of all of the debris from this stone, because this will push in. Additionally, if you want to be extra careful, what people used to do in the good olden days was they would take a piece of tape, put it along the base, and then detune on that spot so that you're not pushing that into the base there. I'm going to show you guys another really good trick here before I go too much further. And it's called the Sharpie trick. And I, honestly, all apologies, but I actually had forgotten about this when I was talking in the first place. So for this, you're going to need your normal file, your normal ice cut file. And this is going back to the process where you are just simply edging your side edges. And you're looking for a consistent edge. I'm going to tighten this thing down. I'm still at my angles and everything like that. Tighten that bad boy down. And this is a really good trick if you're just starting to learn how to do this. What you do is you take a Sharpie and put a mark down your ski in a certain spot, or all the way down your ski if you really want to be consistent. Now, when you edge, you can see if you're truly taking off that edge, because that mark is totally gone. And this is a brand new file, so it's like super, super sharp and effective. So I didn't actually show you what that looked like to start. So I'm going to do that again, and you can do it on the base edge as well. Base edge, be a little bit more careful because you don't want to be sharpieing into your base. But Sharpie mark right there. Pretty positive that one pass will do. So one pass, you can see just a little bit of a Sharpie mark right there. And then with this next pass, you're not going to be able to see it at all. Yeah, it's totally gone. So that's a really nice trick if you don't really know if you're taking off material. Now, I would assume most people here are using new equipment. And the nice thing about using brand new equipment is you get used to how it wears. And so you know, like, okay, this time I'm going to need to do a little bit more or a little bit less or whatever it may be. So I actually can just keep this in here. Yeah, sometimes if you don't really know if you're edging very well, you can use that method. So, now, detuning. Again, don't detune necessarily until you need to. But if your ski is what they call grabby, up top, it's usually going to be grabby right near your rocker point, which is where your skis come together and start flaring out. So it's usually going to be grabby right near or right above that rocker point. And so you want to detune that spot. And so what you can do is you kind of got two different methods. You can use one of these. Try to get 45 degrees to it. And again, just small passes, always starting behind your last stroke as you go down the ski. And usually what you'll do is you'll do a lot of strokes up here near your rocker point, less strokes in the middle, and a bunch of strokes out back. Because you want those rocker points in the front and the back to be detuned more so they're lifting off the snow and not grabbing. So if that makes sense, then you go, and the biggest thing, make sure that you detune equally on both edges and equally on both skis. So I keep a number in my head. I say 3-1-3 or 3-1-2. That's a really common one for me, 3-1-2. What that means is 1, 2, 3. Starting behind it still, but 1, and then 1, 2. And that's making sure that when I flip this ski over and do the other edge now, you do the exact same thing. Now, if you ever detune and you notice that you flipped an edge up, then you can take it down on the other side and just use a really light pressure to take that edge down. Or if you're lucky enough to have one of these really, really soft stones, it's really good for that too. But for the most part, keep a consistent detune. Go to the other edge, detune that. Then if you're still grabby when you go out, you can detune more. And then if you're still grabby, you need to think about if your base is high or if you have an edge that's high. Think about getting your base ground. Think about getting a new pattern put into your ski. Do a bunch of diagnostics at that point. But detuning your skis, if you just got brand new skis, they are not detuned. They are super duper duper dangerous actually until they are detuned, because they actually put you a lot of times on like a 0-0, and it's disgusting. I had this ski, I'm not making any sort of statement on any sort of company, but I had a ski made from Blizzard, or 2 skis I got, and they have a 1-3 edge angle to start, and they are not detuned out of the factory, and it cut my hand open just mounting the screw or the binding into it, and just screwing the screws in and putting my hand on that edge. And if I would have given that ski back to somebody like that, they're in serious danger. And I'm talking about real danger, not inherent risk of just skiing is dangerous. That is really, really dangerous. So when you hand edge your skis, you kind of can control your sharpness a little bit better, and you're usually not going to end up with a situation where you have it where you're like dangerously over edged. But still keep in mind that detuning your tips and tails is, gonna make you get that responsiveness that you want, or that non-responsiveness that you want. If you have a month of powder, you could edge out your whole ski and it doesn't really matter. Same thing, I was focused on skis this whole time, but snowboarding is the exact same for edging. The only difference is detuning. Snowboarders typically detune the absolute crap out of their skis. And the reason for that is so much more of their weight is turning is so much more of their weight doing the work than their equipment doing the work, because they're connected, because they can lean into their turns and get that flex in the foot to make their turns happen. And so they have a lot less that's riding on just that edge angle. And so a lot of times they want their edges to be completely honest, a lot of times snowboarders just flat out don't care at all and just let their equipment go to absolute trash, to the point where when I get a lot of snowboard equipment in, it's just like, I can one and done this thing. Like, I'll full tune it up, but it's never going to be really great again. And after this, like, you got one more session of beating this thing up and it's done. But it's really because the responsiveness is a lot less. As opposed to skiers, you got 4 edges and you notice things a lot more. And because your feet can go apart, independence of your skis needs to be more consistent, because you can have that weird scenario where one thing isn't like the other. That can be really dangerous and really crappy. So detuning is kind of your last step, and I hope that I've helped a lot of people out. I know that I didn't tune a whole ski and go through that whole process, but I think that just seeing the process, you kind of are going to have to get used to using this kind of tool, using your edger, whatever you have. And so I hope that was really helpful. The people who are watching are probably the same people who have been watching a lot of the time. And so I definitely want to hear this message. First of all, thank you so much for watching, and I think we're going to do another session of this, but it's been really awesome to have people here every week consistently. It's made me really happy to see feedback in this shop. But next week is going to be kind of a step back, where we're going to go over some of the more intricate details of what we've already talked about. But the most important thing I want for next week is for you guys to ask me questions. So I'm going to have this now set up where you guys can get either on Facebook Live, you can ask questions as a response to this post or as a response to that next event. And I'll go through and I will spend a good 45 minutes or an hour answering your questions. So if you've wondered things and you don't want to bother me at the shop, or you're one of my people who's randomly from, Switzerland or wherever, which is super awesome. Extra thanks for you guys for finding me, however, on Reddit or whatever it may be. But leave those questions and I will make sure to answer them for next week, or get you on. And if you have equipment that you want looked at, or you want to say, hey, what should I do about this? Then I'm more than happy to do that too. This is not the end of things. This is not the end of the educational section of it. I still have a couple more weeks planned for bass tuning and stuff like that, PTAX, metal grip, stuff like that. But wanted to kind of slow it down for a week, give you guys a chance to ask the questions that you want to ask. So if anybody has any questions now, I am more than happy to answer them. Thanks, Carl. But yeah, I'll wait for 30 seconds a minute. If anybody has any questions, start cleaning up here. But yeah, otherwise, again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope this has been really informative for you guys. I've had a lot of fun doing these. It's just an extra hour and a half out of the day, and I really hope it'll make a difference for not only Eagle Crest, but for the skiing community. Not the greatest skier in the world at all, but I do really, really know a lot about equipment and how it works and how it interacts, and that works to my advantage. And I will tell you that my skis, every time I go out, feel the way they should. And if they don't, I come right back in and just do a quick tune on them, and they're good to go again. So again, it's kind of weird getting more viewers right now, but this is just the end. Next week is going to be kind of a Q&A, as well as I'll go over a couple of other smaller things. But thanks for tuning in this week, guys. If nobody has any other questions, I'm going to end this and get on going. Hopefully not crash and flip over on Fish Creek Road, because that happened twice today for people apparently. So I hope everybody's safe out there. Have a safe and sound season. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. This one's going to be better. I can already feel it. So signing off, guys. I'll see you next week.